Are you interested in a job as a remote medical coder and wondering how do you get your work? What does your setup look like? What materials do you use? Well, if so, you're in luck because today I'm going to be discussing a day in the life of a medical coder. If you're new to my channel, I'm Victoria. I am a medical coder, auditor, educator, and influencer. And on my channel, I discuss medical coding and healthcare tips, tricks, tutorials, and hot news. So I'm going to show you some actual footage of me working from home, and I'm going to tell you it's not always very pretty. I tend to not have myself together as much as I do for my videos as I do when I'm just working, looking at charts and performing audits. So how do I start my day? Well, I typically roll out of bed, I go downstairs, I make myself a big pot of coffee. After that, I take my coffee upstairs and I log in and I start my day. I start my day like a lot of people do. I just first off check my emails. So what kind of emails do you get as a medical coder? It could be things from just your organization, general company updates, things about your PTO. They could be emails from physicians, from providers about things that you coded for them, questions that they might have. It could be questions from practice managers, making sure that you've entered in all of the charts that you've gotten, making sure that all of their physicians' billing is accounted for, or they could be just insurance updates, newsletters on medical coding that you might be subscribed to, stuff from your boss. It could even be just dumb stuff that your coworkers send you. I mean, we're all human. We send dumb stuff to our coworkers sometimes. Just working on some emails today. So after you've gone through and checked out your emails and made sure you've prioritized your day, most coders will kind of get then really into their work. One of the questions you might have is, how does your work get to you? So sometimes it will be automated in the system. You might log in and have a work queue that it's just, here's the tasks assigned to you that you need to code out. It could also be scanned over to you. You might have surgery cards that get sent over to you, scanned over, and you look up the medical record number and that date of service and just code out that service and enter it into the system. You might get scanned super bills. You might get something through your email or through some sort of secure portal or system. You might even be emailed spreadsheets. Maybe the practice manager or someone at the office just sends you a collaborative spreadsheet of all of the stuff that you're supposed to code and bill out. If you're in the office, they would probably give some things to you maybe on paper, like they might leave things on your desk, op notes or op cards, or they might even inter-office them to you. But if you're working remotely, you're going to get those probably through some sort of electronic system. One thing that will surprise some people is that when you are a medical coder, a lot of times you're not just coding things and sending them out the door and that's the end of it. There's a lot of follow-up work as well. So that could be things like queries from the providers. So you might have to follow up on things that you looked at and you went, oh, this documentation isn't entirely clear. Let me send a query to the physician, or sometimes people will just send an email to the physician, have them do some additional documentation to clarify before they bill it out. So you'll have to follow up on some of those cases that you may have been working on for a while. Check and see if your physician has not gotten back to you in a week and you want to resend that email or resend that query. You might even have cases that you're checking with your boss or someone who's a specialist in your department, like getting a second opinion from them, or saying, do we have a policy? Do you think this is an unlisted code? Should I use the unlisted code? So things like that. So there's a lot of follow-up in that area, and also edits in the system. Especially now with EMRs and work queues, if you code something out and maybe you fat fingered a code and it didn't go through correctly, it might bounce back and you might have to look at it. Or if someone in the billing department, in the insurance follow-up department says, hey, this hidden edit, it's telling me that this is not a covered diagnosis. Can you take another look at this and see if there's something else maybe in the chart that would be covered. If not, we'll just have to send it out as it is, but it's probably not going to get paid. So there's a lot of follow-up that I think surprises coders that is just really normal now in the industry, just because of those edits and denials, that it's not as straightforward anymore as, you code the case and you send it out and that's the end of it. You do also now have to oftentimes look at things again for a second time if it's been denied or needs to be looked at again, or the provider's questioning maybe the way that you coded it. I personally, as an auditor, spend a lot of time looking at things that have already been coded and billed out, and then reviewing the documentation, like really deep dive stuff, audit trails and everything, to make sure that everything is compliant and accurate with our insurance regulations, our federal guidelines, our state guidelines, internal guidelines, and just really deep diving into that documentation and reviewing it and making sure that everything's correct, and then printing out reports based off of that. So as just a regular coder, you probably won't be doing those deep dive audits, but there may be a lot of tracking and trending you will have to do. You might have to see, if you have a particularly bad provider, put things onto spreadsheets and reference discrepancies, because if they need to follow back with that provider and provide some additional education, either you or the department or your manager or someone, they'll need all the details of what was going on, how much they maybe potentially lost in revenue, how frequently they were doing it, what were some of the high level specifics of what was going on. And sometimes it's not even just the records or the providers, it could be system issues. So if you're having downtime problems, maybe the EMR is shutting down at certain times of the day, you might have to fill out spreadsheets and say, 2 o'clock, it seems like every Thursday and Friday, it shuts down on me and I can't get into my system. Or, the system gets really slow every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I've tracked it and now I've noticed it. So it's not always just coding. There's a lot of just general office stuff you have to take care of too. One of the things, though, at least with working remotely, that I enjoy is I often, because my coworkers aren't here, have some, midday dance parties going on. That's not to say you're not going to be involved with your team at all. There's still a lot of team meetings that can go on remotely, either through Zoom or various applications, phone conferences, etc. So you're still going to have team meetings likely. You're still going to have possibly one-on-ones with your boss, as well as training sessions. So you might be doing either webinars, or your institution might have educations that they provide internally. So you'll have to be available and ready for those kind of meetings as well. Particularly those productivity and accuracy meetings with your boss, because as a coder, accuracy is key. You always want to follow your guidelines and make sure you're coding accurately, but most coders are also productivity based. There's probably a certain amount of charts or notes or surgeries they're going to want you to code in an hour, and they're going to hold you up to a accuracy level as well. Usually I've seen anywhere from like 95 to 99% accuracy for coders. Now, as a coder, of course, you're going to need a set of books. A CPT book, I keep mine back here, my ICD-10 book. I also have my HIPAA book in case I do any coding for materials, DME, medications, etc. Some coders do use an encoder, which is a lookup tool. Some of them are super savvy, so you can type in like gallbladder and it'll go, oh, okay, what are you doing with the gallbladder? Are you incising? Are you excising? Are you biopsying? And you can hit, excision. Okay, well, was it laparoscopic? Was it open? And it'll kind of guide you through until you find the right code. Some other tools you might need as a coder is if you do E&M, you're probably going to need some audit scorecards to look at. Even if you're not scoring out individually every single note, you're probably going to want to look at it for reference just to make sure. Or you might have a couple cases every now and then where you're like, I don't know, could be a 99213, could be a 99214. Let me just quick go through and double check on that. You might also have some different coding tools that you use online for lookup, things that will check CCI edits, things that will have your CPT corner, your coding clinic, which is your diagnosis-based regulations. You might have access to things that look up a lot of different stuff like a supercoder or various encoder tools that help you find that information, even though some of it, like the Federal Register and stuff, is accessible online. But it's nice to have something comprehensive to combine everything together so that you don't have to go over to CMS to look up a CCI edit and then you're going over to look at a lay term and something else and what have you. As far as setup, I have a private office. Most coders are expected to have a private, secure area so that no one's looking over their shoulder while they have patient information up, because that would be a violation of HIPAA. So you're expected to have a secure, quiet space to work. Not to say that you can't have your dance parties. My setup's a little bit unique, but I do have my work laptop here, and then it's hooked up to my monitor. I only have one monitor because I have an ultra-wide monitor. Most coders like to work off of 2 monitors. I prefer one only because I get vertigo easily. So for me, it's nice to be able to just have that center and look at one monitor, versus if I'm looking at 2 monitors and I have one that the center is over here and one that the center is over here, I'm turning my head. And I find that it's just easier for me and my eyesight to just look at one dead center monitor that's extra long. And then I have typical office stuff: keyboard, mouse. I've even spray painted though my monitor stand so that it matches in with all of my decorum. Some people like headsets. I do have a microphone that I use for when I'm doing any kind of webinars or things where I might be presenting. You might not be doing that as a coder. You might be listening in though, or speaking and asking questions. So not necessarily something you need to have, but it is nice if you have access to one. So yeah, my typical day as a coding auditor: I get up, I roll out of bed, check my emails, audit my cases. I might listen to some podcasts on my computer, my personal computer, have those broadcasting, or play some music, have my little dance parties. I stop and have a shower actually during my lunch break, and then I quick make myself something to eat, get back to work. You know, and I go out and I stretch and what have you as I need to. Sometimes I'm like, just like being in the office, if you're staring at your monitor too long and you start feeling kind of, yucky, it's good to get up, walk off, get out of the couch at least and sit there for a minute or two, breathe, get a snack, get a drink, whatever, and get back to work. But for most medical coders, you're going to be working on coding cases, doing follow-up, answering all those emails, doing your tracking, your trending, making sure that you're keeping up with your productivity, potentially even compiling things for provider education. You might be personally educating the providers, or at least getting the information together for someone else to go out and do that provider education. And yes, as a medical coder, you're going to spend a lot of time reading through charts, searching through charts, looking for things that may or may not be in the charts, questioning why they may or may not be in the charts. But it is a lot of reading, and if you're not someone who's investigative, you don't want to read a lot, medical coding is probably not for you. So even though a lot of medical coders do work from home, you have to enjoy what you do. Otherwise, it's not going to be any fun working from home. So that's a pretty average day in the life of a medical coder. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below. And then if you liked this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, like, subscribe, hit that alert bell so you get those notifications. And don't forget to share this video with your friends that might also be interested in a career in medical coding. I will see you in the next video, and until then, just keep on coding on.